Okay. Hello, my love. We meet again.
Hello.
So, what would you like to talk about today?
I think we should let people know why we're doing this class, this podcast.
Okay. Well, I think that we've been talking about this for a long time, and we've recognized that so much of our growth and revelation has come specifically through our relationship. And speaking for myself, I know that so much of that would have been impossible, or seems to. It seems that it would have been impossible without having you and your perspective and the things that have come up through our relationship. So it just seems very natural and organic that we would show up and say, okay, well, here's our experience of being in a relationship. And, we've talked about how ubiquitous relationship type advice is. And I think that what makes this unique is that we're sharing our relationship advice. Well, again, I'm speaking for myself. I would like to share the experience of our relationship and share, I think, sort of the foundational principles that keep our relationship strong, specifically so that people can experience relationship as an avenue for spiritual growth.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my intention.
Wonderful. Yeah. Similarly, I feel that I've learned an incredible amount from watching you be in relationship with me, be in relationship with others. And I mean, we just got out of a 45-minute conversation where I'm trying to understand something and I'm just saying a lot of words, and you're helping me to understand the nuances of what I'm working through. And I think that we've always joked about having these conversations and how great it would be just to record them so people could see what it's like to work out these dynamics, work out these ideas in healthy communication and conversation. Yeah, it just seems like the right time to begin doing
Okay.
Yeah.
And here we are.
Here we are.
So, what do you want to start with?
Well, we've made lists forever, right? We have all these lists and ideas. We've brainstormed about what we could talk about. I wrote down a few things about, what is it like to be in a healthy relationship? What is it like to communicate well? What are the strategies that we have? What are the skills we have? But maybe before we get to that place, we could talk about a little bit of our history in relationships and, what have we learned?
The sordid past.
The sordid past. Yeah, I mean, not in great
Sure.
detail, but maybe we could talk a little bit about some of the experiences we've had and how that brought us together.
Yeah. Okay. Shall I begin, or would you like to share?
I would like to invite you to begin.
Okay. Invitation accepted. Well, I think that the essential difference between our relationship and any other relationship I've been in, and I suppose that includes literally all relationships with any humans, but I think for the purpose of this podcast share course, whatever it is that that sort of becomes of this, we're keeping it to romantic, type relationships, partnerships. I think the single most important distinction is that in my relationship with you, it's the only time I've ever felt free to be completely and fully myself at all times. Um, I think that's a pretty significant distinction. I think that that is something that if you haven't experienced that, that's a general you. If people have not experienced that, um, it can't be overstated how much freedom comes with that experience of being able to show up completely 100% authentically in relationship. Um, so in every other relationship, I always felt that there was some part of me that either I wasn't okay with, and so I didn't want it to be seen, or some part of me that I suspected my significant other wouldn't be okay with, um, or some way of communicating that wouldn't be okay. And again, anything other than just this is completely and fully who I am here right now. And so the shift from that way of being into the way of being that you and I know both have in our relationship together is just extraordinary. And there's a degree of freedom, even to call it a degree is not quite accurate
Mhm.
because it's total freedom. So it transcends degrees. And so once that has been experienced, um, at least for me, once that was experienced, I now can't conceive of being in relationship that is other than that, other than um, a relationship in which I'm able to completely and fully show up as myself, my complete self, um, at all times
Why do you think that that's possible for you in our relationship?
in our relationship.
Mhm.
Um, well, I think that it's a two-way street. I think that it has to do with um, all of the healing that took place between my previous relationships and our relationship. Um, most notably, obviously, my marriage and divorce. So all of the healing that I engaged in. And then, of course, that really needed to be and has been mirrored from your side, um, where your openness and going through your own healing process and willingness and desire to see me exactly as who I am mirrored my willingness and ability to show up exactly as I am. And so I think it's been a synchronistic two-way street. In other words, I can certainly conceive of a scenario in which maybe I had done my own healing and just finally come to a place and said, that's it. I'm not filtering or editing myself ever again for a relationship. I will just be exactly who I am with no shame and share that and still have gotten involved in a relationship where the other person couldn't handle that. And that relationship wouldn't have lasted, obviously. So I can conceive of that, or vice versa. I can conceive of having not done my own healing and somebody like you or you showing up and saying, I can see it all, I can take it all, I can handle it all. Let me see what's there, and not being willing or able to show that.
I think you just pointed to something I hadn't really even put into words until, I know we've kind of practiced this conversation a little bit on our walks in the mornings and stuff.
Right.
But when you said I had the desire to see who you are,
Mm-hmm.
uh, makes me think that that's what we share. That's the most important, the desire to know the truth.
Yes.
And I did not have a relationship prior to meeting you where that was okay,
Right.
where we could know the truth, the real truth about one another.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of denial and playing pretend.
Yep.
let me pretend to be who I think that you need me to be or want me to be, and please,
Right.
other person, pretend to be who I need you to be and want you to
Right.
be.
Yes, characters in a story that we've created.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Whereas I think we both, maybe you a little before me, because you've been on a spiritual journey for linearly anyway,
Mhm.
in this lifetime longer than me.
Right.
um, but I think from the beginning we really wanted to see and know the truth, not just about each other, but about the world, about the universe, about spirit.
Yeah. And it's interesting. Of course, you make a distinction between all those things, but really, obviously, and I know that you know this, but you can't really learn the truth in one area and not in another, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
And I think that's worth noting for people who are on a path or perceive themselves to be seekers of truth. That if we want to know the truth about God, creation, the universe, the world, how it all works, and you're not willing, able, or ready to know the truth about your significant other, and also then about your own shadow side, that it just doesn't work. It doesn't happen that way.
Mm.
Um, that we're either open to the truth in its entirety or not.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that points me right back to what I said at the beginning, and what I would like to share with this format, and what I think is unique about the context in which you and I will be discussing relationships, is that was my, and continues to be my experience, that the more deeply I open to the truth of us, which is to say the truth of exactly who you are, um, without you needing to be anything else other than your authentic self, and the truth of knowing who I am, and allowing that to play out in relationship, the more that I do that, the more the universe reveals itself to me. Right.
Mm. Hmm.
That's my experience.
Yeah, I agree. That's why my favorite time of day is when we're sitting on our porch having one of our chats about whatever topic is up for us that day.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm hoping that within this format we will be able to bring those types of conversations to other people.
Right.
Okay. What do you, here's just a curiosity question. What do you think created the impetus to, what do you think created, I don't even know how to phrase this. Um, how did all this happen? How did you move into the capacity to be in a relationship that was one of mutual desire for truth?
Um, well, I mean, the brief, succinct, and sort of all-encompassing answer is, I just, after my divorce, and the end of that relationship, I was just so sick of um, the same old patterns, that I allowed I think that experience of destruction, right, of death, of collapse, of the old stories and ideals to be a catalyst for um, this new beginning. But I think the you say, well, how did this begin, or how did I get to this place? It was really through the end of something else. Um, and I think that we have to really be willing to let something die.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's often something big. And I know in both of our cases, it was the story of our previous relationships. And not just the story of that relationship, but the story of relationship in general. all of the mass mind ideas and sort of romantic notions and all the storytelling.
Mhm.
All of that had to die. And then in that death, in that sort of lowest point, go, well, I mean, it doesn't really get any worse than this. I might as well, while I'm here in hell, I might as well look around and see what else I can find, right? See what else I can throw into the flames. It's all burning. I might as well take advantage of the conflagration and see what else is not needed or wanted anymore, and offer it to the flames. So it was a complete surrender. I think
Mm.
that's necessary.
Yeah, I
But then,
remember. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, no, yes, I know you remember. You were there. You watched most of
Yes,
it.
I did.
But then, just on a more practical dimension, both of us, we spent years in therapy, doing therapeutic work, trauma clearing, exploration of all sorts of avenues of healing. It just became our full-time job. That's all we did, was engage in healing, talk about it, explore, look within ourselves. Um, and it did become, I think, our full-time job.
Mm.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I remember back in 2015 when I moved and we were creating our business, our healing clinic business, and we were asked to choose 3 values
Mm.
For the business. Do you remember this?
I do remember the process. I just don't remember what I chose or what we chose. I'm sure you do. You have a much better memory than I do.
I know one was love,
Mhm.
but what I'm thinking of now was truth.
Mm.
Because at that time we were both of us were really tired of lying to ourselves
Yeah.
and feeding into the lies
Yeah.
that were just all of the lies.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I can remember just hitting this point where I was just disgusted. I just couldn't lie anymore to myself. And I remember how that changed everything when I finally said, I surrender this. I'm not going to lie anymore. I only want the truth. And I remember I did a clearing on that, like a very deep clearing on the causes for lying to myself. And as I was coming out of that clearing, I remember now thinking, this is it. The jig is up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like all of the ways of staying asleep in my life, all of the comfort of lying to delay healing or to just not get too messy.
Yeah.
It was done. I really made a very strong choice at that
So
time.
what do you think, either from your personal experience or working with others, what do you think those common and somewhat insidious lies are, or ways of lying?
Um, I'm okay with this. That was one of the main lies that I told myself. I'm okay with this. I'm fine with this.
This being,
Whatever. I mean, fill in the blank. I'm fine with this relationship. I'm fine with this dynamic. I'm fine with doing this work. I'm fine with
where I am in life.
where I am in life. I'm fine with this story that I have about myself.
Mm.
I'm fine with this person's treatment of me. That was probably the main lie when it was not the truth. I was not feeling good.
Right.
In those moments, I was feeling like I needed to change, but I wasn't quite ready. I didn't have the clarity or whatever it was. But when I did that deeper clearing around all the causes for lying to myself, because of that very strong intention, I was just faced with the truth all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I then had to get myself moving in my life to do what I need to do to be in integrity with myself. Yeah. I think that's really since being with you is my relationship feels very full of integrity. Whereas prior to that, I was out of integrity a lot.
Right. And I think
Across
it's
the
probably
board.
worth clarifying. I'm speaking for you a little bit here, that you're referring to sort of an internal integrity within your own being.
Yeah.
Not
Yes.
not like you know, had, a
No, I
habit of
didn't have
cheating
lots
on
of,
your taxes and,
no,
stealing from the grocery store.
no. No, I mean, the thought of that is just simply awful to me. I can't imagine.
Right.
I'm a very trouble averse person.
But I think that's kind of the point, right? Is that you live this very sort of superficially kind of in alignment existence,
Hmm.
right? That to outside perceptions, you seemed to be in sort of perfect harmony with the world.
Hmm.
But that was not your internal experience. And there was nobody that was going to be able to sort of show that to you if you weren't going to see it yourself.
Yeah,
Nobody else could see that.
my lie was so good. I fooled everyone and myself
Yeah.
for years.
Yeah. It's interesting in all of the conversations we've had. This is the first time it's ever occurred to me that there's sort of an association between lying and projection.
Mm.
Because as you were talking, I was sort of pondering the ways in which I, sort of lied to myself. eh, Again, in this particular context, say in my marriage, right, in my previous relationship. Um, and it occurred to me that the lies were really actually projections. Um,
Mhm.
and of course, that's how psychodynamics work. That there's a lie within me that's unconscious. Of course, it is going to be sort of projected out in some fashion. Um, but the lies I told myself were lies about what kind of woman I was married to, right?
Mhm.
And that's not a condemnation of her. I mean, we both, you know her, and she's a perfectly wonderful woman. But I was telling all kinds of lies about how she and I synced up, when in reality, this is what was happening, right? So the lies were about what I wanted and needed in a relationship, and also lies about who this other person was and what this other person wanted, and trying to make the lies about myself sync up with the lies about her. Again, we're using lying here sort of very philosophically.
Mhm.
This was, these are all mostly unconscious dynamics.
Right.
Um, and it's only after the fact. And in fact, if you recall, it's only very, very recently, right, that I mean, within, I think it was like a month or two ago, it had been years since I'd had any contact with my ex. And there had been a number of things that had sort of come up for me and from different directions. Long story short is, I thought, okay, I think I need to just sort of reach out here for some reason. I don't know why. And I did, and really got very quickly shut down in terms of any potential for renewed contact. And for those listening, our marriage dissolved very amicably.
Mhm.
There were no lawyers involved. It was very easy. We remained friends and in contact, and then at some point stopped. So there was no animosity or real strain or difficulty. But so I reach out and sort of get kind of shut down pretty quickly. And I thought, holy shit, like I was still doing it.
Mhm.
I was still telling stories about who this person is and was, and what kind of relationship was ever there to begin with. And it was only very recently that I was confronted with sort of the stark reality of how much lying there was, how much projection, how much falseness. And so it was only, again, a couple months ago that I really got confronted with that sort of in its final expression, and went, oh, like there was really never anything there in that relationship that was going to last. It was a facade from the beginning, a shared facade. There's no blame, of course, being put on either myself or her. It's just how this stuff works. But yeah, the lies go pretty deep.
Of course, I'm going philosophically in my head. Well, all relationship is illusion.
This is
None
true.
of it's destined to last.
Right. Yeah.
It just seems to last in some cases longer than others.
Right.
Well, yeah. So we've both had this experience of creating, of projecting our own ideas of what we want in a partner onto the other person, and using our mind to make it all real, even
Yeah.
if it's not really accurate.
Right.
I created a whole story about my ex, that made him like into some kind of white knight hero character. And then when I was in relationship with you, I hadn't seen that yet, so I had to dismantle that
Yeah.
all the way, and of course it's kind of interesting because I am a person that doesn't actually like to ask for help, or I have been. That's the sense of my personality anyway. It's so much that it still exists a lot, in an obvious way.
Right.
So for me to have created this story in which men are like white knight figures or heroes, and yet I don't have a voice that asks for help is really ironic.
Yeah.
Again, it's all of this internal dialogue that happens, and isn't often communicated.
Right.
But it's just part of the lies that I told myself. On one hand, this person is my hero. On the other hand, I don't need help. I can do it all myself. It's a conundrum.
Yeah, the lies are a house of cards for sure. And I think that's why it's scary to confront them, because we're often living in that house.
Or on top of it in some way.
Yeah, and the lies don't really come kind of conveniently and neatly apart one at a time to be replaced by truth. It's the house of cards crumbles essentially,
Right.
at some point. That doesn't mean all relationships are doomed for unhappy endings when people should begin to show up in them, because I think when two people are on the same page in relationship, and we've worked and still work with some couples who are in that situation, there's a mutual sharing and participation in the conscious destruction and dismantling, and then a shared rebuilding, all that stays within the context of the relationship. So I feel like that's worth mentioning, lest people get too much of a doom and gloom sort of vibe.
Yeah.
From in our situations, it meant the end of relationships, long-term marriages. I don't know that that's universally true. It's definitely not universally true. I wouldn't care to conjecture about how common it is or percentages or anything like that, but yeah. But even then, I think it's worth people sort of taking inventory and going, okay, am I consciously going to avoid seeking the truth because I'm afraid of how it will impact my relationship? And
Yes.
if you answer yes to that question, that's a lot of information, right?
Yeah, like I have created this boundaries workshop. It's like a list of, not workshop, worksheet, a list of things that people can work through, the needs that they have in relationships, the desires, their boundaries around certain things. And, we offer that to clients regularly. And very few people are ready to fill it out.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot to write down and get clear about what you want and need in relationship. I mean, if I had done that in my marriage, I don't know what would have. I mean, maybe I wouldn't have been able to. I mean, I
Right.
literally, it wasn't even until like even a year into the relationship with you where I was like, what are my needs and desires? I don't know. I feel like
Yeah.
I just got here somehow and I didn't, I kind of unconsciously created it.
Right.
Yeah, and doing that exercise was so um, helpful. It was so helpful to actually get consciously aware of, what are my boundaries in relationships? What are my expectations? What are my needs?
Yeah. And that's something that I've talked about a lot with other men, like in the men's group, for instance. Um, that that even takes a lot of, as you're expressing, it takes a lot to even come to the place where you can do that. And
Mhm.
um, for me, it's I use the word permission. It takes a lot for us to give ourselves permission to actually show up and tell the truth, even when it's sort of like just in our diary, right? Or whatever, on a worksheet that you can turn around and burn a second later, to even be able to tell the truth to yourself. And similarly, I mean, if I reflect back on, what my marriage dynamics were like and how just hysterical it would have been for me to fill out, well, here's what I desire and here's what I need, and here and to do that authentically and then sort of turn around and compare it to my marriage, it's like, oh shit. um, Whoops. But even to begin to give ourselves permission to do that takes a degree of healing. um, uh, I don't know how else to put it, a degree of effort, a degree of surrender, courage, um, to even take that step. And that's what you're pointing at. Like, we send that worksheet to everybody, right? And 1% of people actually do the worksheet,
Right.
because as soon as you start putting that stuff down, you're making a prayer for the truth, right?
Mhm.
um, and the truth will set you free, but it will often do it by destroying what is not true.
Right.
And so things begin to get dismantled pretty quick when we do that.
Right. And that doesn't mean, like you said before, marriage is ending. It
Right.
just means the marriage as you know it, the relationship, because this
Yep.
is for any relationship, the
Yep.
relationship as you know it, you have clarity now. And when you have clarity, it's a good thing to act on that.
Yes. In fact, I'm sure we can both think of examples from our work with clients. And I read a lot of examples. In fact, I was just reading one this morning, reading a particular seminar that Carl Jung did in like 1926. And he's talking about this male client's dream material, and how essentially the material was pointing him towards the need to sort of communicate his um, lack of connection and sexual connection, in particular with his wife, and how afraid he was to do that, to be seen as he was,
Mm.
out of a sort of sense of, well, what would this destroy, right?
Mhm.
And meanwhile, turns out the wife is also seeing Dr. Young and is having similar sorts of dreams and fantasies.
Mm.
And so they're both sort of there hiding from their own shadows, not sharing these aspects of themselves with one another that they're actually both secretly desiring to experience and share. Um, and I think that probably happens a lot.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, the sessions that we've had with couples are
mhm,
generally experiencing the same like belief that's holding them back from a deeper connection.
right,
They share the same pattern,
right.
but they can't see it in one another. Yeah. Your talk about journals made me laugh because I remember I found a journal recently, and in my journal, it's full of lies.
Ah,
It's like such and such thing happened to me, like seventh grade. And but it's okay because, X, Y, and
uh,
Z. It's like filled with that kind of my attempt to comfort myself and make things okay when
mhm,
there was a deep sense inside of me that not good. Like, this is not what I want
Yeah.
to be experiencing.
Well, that's an interesting point, because I think, again, the sort of counterpoint to what we've been discussing is that there's a time and place in which the lies and the projections are a part of survival,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right? And they're a necessary part of existence. So the fact that this sort of grand facade gets constructed in the first place isn't like, oh, you did it wrong, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's no, this is just how it works. Everybody creates this um, through their life experience growing up, and then later, hopefully, you uh, become aware of it and go through a process of dismantling it or allowing it to be dismantled or destroyed, and you begin to do that work. But it isn't as though something has gone wrong,
Mm.
right? Like, you told yourself those lies because that's how you keep sane in middle school,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
right?
totally.
Yeah.
That's
But
how I kept sane for most of my life. And until
right.
I had, yeah, what is the, I guess I keep wanting to look at what is the quality or qualities that are needed to be able to open yourself up to the truth. Like, what needs to happen? I mean, that it's kind of a mystery, right? It's a
Yeah.
little bit of a mystery, or it's a lot of a mystery.
Right.
I feel like I can like make stories up about it. Like, well, I was had enough wisdom at that point to be able to face the truth
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah. I got nothing. I
The
mean,
unanswerable question.
I could say, oh, well, there's some innate quality, like I've always been a truth seeker at some level. And that's true, except I wasn't enough of a truth seeker to keep from, marrying a perfectly lovely human being who was totally wrong for me. Right. So, great. I was wonderful at telling the truth and searching for truth, except where I wasn't and couldn't. What do you what do you do with that? Nothing.
These are the kind of questions that we think about and talk about, though,
Yeah, yeah,
on the front porch.
yeah, we do. But I think, I think for people who have, made it this far, right? There's a good chance that there is something innate there,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, and let me say that, because I feel like this is about the only thing that can really accurately be said, at least from my perspective, is that um, the self always wants to express and be known. And the self is truth. And it's by its nature, it is seeking self-awareness, expansion, movement into greater awareness. That's just its nature. Um, so I think it is innate, but then at the same time, um, there comes a point, especially again for the type of people who are typically going to be watching something like this, um, that we can begin making conscious decisions to stop interfering with that process,
Mm.
right? Stop continuing to tell the same lie that is a lie over and over and over again, or begin to practice and cultivate an energy of surrender. So I think there are certainly practices, but all I feel really comfortable saying is that um, the self, by its nature, is moving into truth and seeking truth.
Mm.
Why does that play out a certain way with you and I and become sort of a lifetime commitment and the driving force in our life versus somebody else, because it's all the same self, right? Why is it doing it one way over here and seeming to do it some other way, or not do it at all over there? I have no idea.
You usually know everything.
Well, we found it then.
We found the thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a mystery. Why did I begin healing when I did? I don't know.
right,
The timing was perfect.
right.
but I don't know why.
Yeah. But I guess I do feel also comfortable saying that there is some type of threshold where if you're ready for that, the opportunities begin arising. Um, and so again, anybody who's watching has watched this far into a conversation like this. Um, there's something happening there, right? There's this expansion is reaching some sort of critical threshold whereby um, anything other than truth telling won't really take hold in the system. And so then there is an opportunity to begin consciously making decisions to be in alignment. Because
Mhm.
I guess for me, I don't want it to come across too much like, oh, just kind of check out, sit back, and if it's meant to be, the universe will do it. I mean, yes, that's true. And our experience was that it took a great deal of personal courage and efforting and conscious decision making about how we wanted to live our lives going forward, what we wanted to be like in relationship going forward. And it was difficult and messy a lot of the time. Consciously, we chose that. It wasn't just sort of kicking back and you know, letting fate unfold.
Right. I think you just said the third word that we chose for the business.
What was that?
Courage. It was
Ah,
courage.
that's
It
right. I
was
do remember that.
love, courage, and truth.
Huh.
We were so wise.
Yeah,
I
or
could see
just
that.
blind squirrels stumbling into a tasty morsel, or both, the
Yeah.
paradox. Yeah. Mhm.
Hmm. Okay. Well, we seem to have stumbled into a theme for this talk, lying to ourselves.
Yes, that's fine. I
Something
was
like
going to say that the theme was truth, but hey,
that.
we can go with lying. That works too.
The truth and lying. I don't know. Denial
Yeah,
and the truth.
yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
Well, that seems like a great starting point, I think, for people who might be interested in um, engaging with us and with others in an exploration of what it means to be in relationship, healthy relationship, in relationship oriented towards growth and expansion. Um, this seems like a pretty foundational place to start.
Mhm.
There's no more lying. This is a
Right.
place of truth. Our relationship is a place of truth. And sometimes that's soft and sweet, and other times it's very difficult. Um,
Hmm.
but the truth is always appreciated. Um, I know from our individual perspectives, and it's also the thing that is, of a sort of highest value, shared highest value within our relationship. Um, and so I think that it's good for people to know that that's really what we're wanting to help people move into, um, is truth of who they are, truth of who we are, and how to use relationship to um, get out of the way of the lies. I was going to say to find truth or access truth, but that's not really what it is. The truth is just there, covered with everything that is sort of
Right.
not truth.
Yeah. Veiled
Yeah,
emperor behind the, like
yeah,
Wizard of Oz, the wizard behind the curtain.
yes. Wizards,
So-
emperors, somebody. Some story.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think practically speaking, because I love to come back to the practical things, the way that you show up for me to understand the truth and to learn the truth is by allowing me, very practically speaking, like just happened today, allowing me to have my emotions, have my feelings. Um, you're not trying to make me feel better. You're not collaborating with me in whatever lie or story I'm in. You're not like, yes, that's, oh no, that everything's good here. You don't need to worry. You let me speak about things, talk things through. You don't interrupt. You share any awareness of truth that you have that helps bring me back into what I really know inside, but I'm having trouble perceiving.
Mhm.
You're really good at that.
Thank you, love.
You're welcome.
And you're really good at all of the processing of the alchemy. I'm struck by that often. Um, that I can work through things. I don't want to say intellectually per se. It's not like these are math problems, but I have a more kind of neck up sort of way of processing and being with this material. And yours has always been a more visceral way.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, if we're invested in our partners being like us, that's a problem, right? Like if I were invested in being right, having an answer to what's going on with you, or needing it, wanting you to sort of just, gosh, why can't you just see how this is, instead of being able to just watch and observe and know how you process and work with this sort of material, that for me to interject anything other than, well, here's a thought. What do you think about that? No. Okay. Well, here's another thought. What do you think? Maybe. Okay. For me to do anything other than that would be to, it's like I would be keep, opening up it's like when you keep opening up the oven when you're trying to make a cake, right? I'm using this analogy as if I've ever made a cake, but I hear that this is a thing, right? That it ruins that you have to keep the door shut and allow the heat and the energy to do what it's doing. You don't want to short circuit that, right? And I know that that's like today, that's what you spent time in, and for you it looks like an emotional process. And yes, as if me as your partner, if I have a distaste of the emotional process, or a distrust of it, or I make it inferior to the sort of intellectual process, then every time you go into your natural, organic way of working with things, suddenly it becomes a problem for me, right? It becomes something wrong with you, and it becomes a problem for me, and it becomes a problem in the relationship.
Yeah, and I think that happens in a lot of relationships where two people have different styles of processing. And, within me, I used to wish that I could be more rational and more like be able to process from like the neck up.
Mhm.
And would I worked to try to develop that to some degree, but I'm still not particularly good at it.
Yeah.
I mean, I can do it kind of, but I still appreciate being able to come to you and say, these unrelated feelings and thoughts, seemingly unrelated, and what does it mean?
Yeah.
And you are able to, I mean, gosh, all kinds of things, quote scripture, talk about high level topics, see it from a Jungian lens, see it from a soul lens. You're able to kind of help me take all of this energy that I'm experiencing, and it's like inside me, I know what it is, but I don't have words for it. And I'm
Right.
moving in that direction, whether you help me or not. I'm
Right.
moving innately in that direction, but I can get there seemingly faster if I share it.
Yeah. And so I think you're pointing towards this fundamental principle in healthy relationship that is exactly contrary to sort of stories about relationships sometime, or expectations, which is that the fact that we are opposites is a part of what makes the relationship work.
Mhm.
When you understand how these dynamics play out in relationship, and you consciously work with them in that way. So, we're both heterosexual, and so the fact that we're opposite genders biologically, that works, right?
Mhm.
That makes the relationship work. It adds to the relationship. The fact that I have a developed thinking function and you have a developed feeling function, which are opposites, works because we're conscious of these kinds of dynamics. If I'm invested in you being a thinker like me, then I'm going to be constantly disappointed and constantly stressed out. And I lose the value that you offer as somebody who is an expert in the feeling function, because that's the function that I struggle with, right? Or that's a function that is lesser developed in me.
Mhm.
And so when we're willing to allow the differences to actually be a part of what makes for a greater whole, then suddenly the potential for growth in the relationship is magnified because of the differences.
Right.
Of course, there's a core of commonality underneath that, but
And I would just say to finish, um, I don't have an expectation that you be my thinking function. I think that before I might have, like, please make sense of this for me. Um, it works for us because you offer that to me willingly.
right. Yes, and it works because we've both also done work around codependency, right?
Mhm.
And we know how to sniff it out, and we're not really interested in that being a part of the relationship. Yeah.
Well, I think we need to end now,
Okay.
or at least pause it.
Well, thanks for chatting with me,
You're welcome. I love
like you
you.
do every day
Yeah.
of our lives. Yeah.
Thank you for chatting with me.
Yeah. Okay.
Class one done.